I See Some Children Crossing the Bridge. Now, that song is not on this album, but I'm going to provide you with a literary bridge that connects the Tunnel of Love to the broader history and actually will connect us to the origin of English literature. Now, before we get into that, we want to talk about some recent updates, and shout out to my man Snax, because this homie has been busting his butt producing these, editing these, doing the research. Like, This I just want to say on record, this show would not happen if it weren't for MC Snax. And he's going to give us what we like to call a new segment called Juggalo Update. Boom! Take it away, Snax.
Thank you, brother. It's an honor to be a part of it, and I just hope that all the Juggalos are enjoying it. And so a few cool things, like ICP recently put out a single off of the upcoming Joker's card, Yum Yum Flower. The album's going to be called Yum Yum Bedlam, and the song is called Ding Ding Doll. Super cool song about a guy that orders like a haunted doll, and just the production's amazing. The whole song is great, and we're still in the midst of the streaming Halloween, the ICP House Party Peep Show, the Patreon service that's going on all month. They, at the time of recording this, they just had the JCW event last night, and it's been great, man. Also, on some stale news, Saint Dog of, original member of KMK, Cottonmouth Kings, did pass away at the young age of 44, which is so incredibly stale, and we just want to say, rest in peace, Saint Dog.
And he's very present on the early stuff. And what is their first album? One of their first albums, he's like featured on all the songs. What's the one where the logo's carved into the desk?
Royal Highness, I believe.
Royal Highness, which has Bump and like a lot of their big OG songs. So yeah, that's like a big loss, and that's young as heck. Had you ever seen them live?
Yeah, I did. I seen them on a Strange Noise tour that Suburban Noise used to always do with Strange Music.
Yeah, rest in peace. That's young, man. That's
it is.
Yeah, well, some great music, and his music will live on. And I heard about that on the Juggalo subreddit. So I was talking about that with a lot of people this week.
Yeah, and it's getting lots of coverage, like, from non-Juggalo sources as well, which, it's good that he's getting recognition because he's an absolute underground legend.
Holler. Well, let's connect. Let's talk about Tunnel of Love. And so I started the episode talking about bridges. Now, this imagery is used on the Wraith to talk about a bridge to salvation, to Shangri-La, and that's a whole thing we'll get into later. I want to talk about another man who built bridges. Geoffrey Chaucer, holler! Now, this man built a bridge between medieval and Renaissance literature with the Canterbury Tales, which came out in the early 15th century, tells the story of these homies on a pilgrimage to go to the martyred cathedral of Thomas Becket, who I know you, Snax, know all about this flavor because you know a lot about the history of the church. And this book, The Canterbury Tales, is important because it helped codify the English vernacular, meaning it helped make the way people speak, how they actually speak, part of the popular documented literary form. And there's a bunch of genres in this story. So basically the story is these people are going to go to pay tribute to Thomas Becket, right? And this inn owner's like, all right, I got a task for y'all. Who wants a free meal? They're like, we do, we're hungry, blah, blah, blah. He's like, all right, whoever tells the best stories, I'm going to hook up with some free flavor when we get back from visiting the cathedral. And they're like, oh, shoot. So this allows Chaucer to make a framing device where he takes all these different stories of the time and all these characters and he brings it to life. And the Canterbury Tales might be confusing and kind of boring, but as a piece of literary history, it's fresh. So I want to talk about a type of genre he writes about. It's called the fableau, which is a ribald and satirical story that he tells that might have like sexual undertones or whatever, and it appeals to like the working class humor of the era. So I'm gonna tell you about two stories. So the first is the Summoner's Tale. So this friar is going around talking about how he's so holy, maybe kind of like the priest in Hallelujah. He's like, yo, I'm the best, everyone likes me, blah, blah, blah. And he visits people and they're like, he visits his family and this wife is like, yeah, it's been really hard since our kid died. And the friar's like, oh yeah, I remember that. But he doesn't. He's manipulating them. And the husband goes, yo, I got something for you. Reach under here. And he farts on the friar. He's just lets wind go. And then everyone's like busted. That's example. That's a Summoner's Tale. let me tell you about the Miller's Tale. This one is actually the funniest in the whole Canterbury Tales. So there's this carpenter from Oxford. He has this young wife. She's really beautiful. And there's this student who's hollering at her. And he's like, yo, I think you're hot. I want to go on a date with you. And she's like, okay, we can when my husband's asleep. And then there's this super religious guy who keeps hollering, bringing her flowers. She's like, I'm not feeling you. Quit hollering at me. I didn't swipe right on you. This is the age of COVID. I'm not trying to have random hookups. Well, it's a little bit after the Black Death, but that's another story. And so this is the funniest part of the whole story. So he's like, all right, I got this plan. I'm going to tell your husband I'm sick. He's living with them, by the way, because he's an Oxford student living with them. I'm going to tell your husband I'm sick and pretend I'm in bed. Then when the husband comes over, I'm going to say I have this vision that there's about to be another flood and the world's going to be flooded with water, right? And so she's like, okay, you can tell him that. So he says to the husband, a flood is coming. Because he's a carpenter, I want you to build these boats and hang them from the roof of the barn. So when the flood comes, you can sail away and it's all good. So you sleep up in the boat and it's all good. Guess what he does? He uses this as an top opportunity to commit adultery. So meanwhile, the religious man comes over and he comes to the window. He's like, give me a kiss, right? And she's like, all right. So she goes to the window and sticks out her butt and he kisses her butt and he goes, I don't remember you having a beard. That's foul. And then he gets so mad. He's like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to serve her right. So the guy comes back and he comes to the window. He's like, give me a kiss for real. So then the student comes out, sticks his butt out and farts in the guy's face. And the guy's like, yo, that's not nice. So he takes a fire poker and stabs him in the butt. And the student is like, yo, my butt's on fire. Water, water. So when he says that, guess what happens? The homie hanging from the boat thinks the flood's coming. So he cuts the rope and he falls down and breaks his arm. End the story. These are examples of fabulous stories, which are ribald and satirical tales. And Tunnel of Love is replete with these stories that carry on in the medieval Renaissance literature fusion of Geoffrey Chaucer. Snax, let's talk about the background of this EP now that we know its literary origins.
Absolutely. So, man, the lit hop knowledge never ceases to flip my wig back. That's crazy. Before, with those stories, I'm curious, were they considered PG or PG-13 at the time? Were they for adults only? What's the situation there?
Well, what's interesting about the Canterbury Tales is that it was so popular because it capitalized on the early Gutenberg printing press, and they were not appropriate for kids, but it was the first time inappropriate stories were written down. And plus, one of the first editions was illustrated with all the characters. So people could relate to that. And it wasn't seen as literature, high class literature, because literature and the novel was not even a real format. Chaucer was early in that kind of creating the format. So it was not for kids, but it was for adults who wanted to get drunk and read these stories and laugh. And a lot of the stories people had heard, but Chaucer, as a true hip hop producer, remixed and brought everything together and made the ultimate mixtape, which is the Canterbury Tales, which is an amazing piece of literature and probably the first classic Middle English epic. That's why I had to give it props.
Word up, man. Well, it's definitely suitable for this because Tunnel of Love is definitely an EP where you have to leave any pretentiousness at the door because the humor can definitely get a bit crude because it is ICP's basically take on doing love songs. And it was released on June 11th, 1996. And it's actually pretty significant in the ICP career story just because they did something really cool when it comes to the release. As we talked about on the Riddlebox episode, Hollywood Records eventually bought their contract out from Jive. But they had 2 days in between being off of Jive and officially signed to Hollywood. And in those 2 days, that's when this EP came out. So the release date is almost like a little time marker for their time in between the labels. And that just shows the business acumen that Psychopathic had and still has to this day.
And it's the second ride-themed sideshow EP. And I'm wondering, is the third one The Tempest? Or was there any others? 'Cause that's a roller coaster, Jay talks about, right?
That's a good question, actually. Because Eye of the Storm was after The Tempest, and The Calm wasn't really a sideshow. You might be right about that, dude.
Yeah, I was thinking that it was kind of cool how you were saying how there's two different covers, one of which we cannot show because we don't want to get the channel banned. Right. But there was on the more mainstream version, in the bottom right corner, there's a heart with the riddle box in it.
That's right.
I think I remember that Terror Wheel, doesn't that have the Ringmaster on the cover?
It's got a little silhouette of the Ringmaster, absolutely. So
yeah,
they're kind
so
of like
that's
marking those eras, which is super cool. And
Yeah.
like you said, they kept doing EPs, but like the actual like ride sideshow theme was, I think, left behind a little bit in the later 90s.
the Juggalos know this, but the cards are the people who work at the Dark Carnival, and the EPs. The concept up to this point is that they're the rides that these characters run, the carnies run, and so it's really cool. I mean, it's a very deep, like, interesting way to present the characters. So Snax. So let's talk about this. So there's love songs. We talked about this on the last episode, or at least maybe off camera. It feels like Tunnel of Love maybe was recorded before Riddlebox. But I was listening to it yesterday, and then on Spotify when you're done, it will go to like a random other song. Mm-hmm. So it went into Chicken Hunting, and I was like, okay. The main difference is the mixing and mastering. Word. Jive probably paid hella money for the mixing and mastering because you hear that da-na, bong, da-na, and Chicken Hunting, and you can hear, this is just the function of like really good production. And Tunnel of Love has good production, but it's not mixed or mastered as well. And there are some like technical things that stand out as weird that we'll talk about. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about some trivia. So where was the first use of Whoop Whoop, and how does this relate to some songs on this EP?
For sure. So as we mentioned in a few episodes ago in the Carnival Christmas EP, Santa Killas actually has the first Whoop Whoop, and it pretty much widely accepted as the first use of Whoop Whoop. It's only used like twice, though, chanted along to the last chorus on that song. But on this EP, it becomes being used much more prominently, specifically on Super Balls and Stomp. You can definitely hear it much more in the foreground and much more in the way that it's known to be used today.
But I am always curious because it's like, they definitely say whoop woo or whoop woo. I don't know where the P came from on whoop. It's woo woo. It reminds me of the Karis one, Sound of the Police. That's the sound of the police. Whoop whoop. That's the sound of the beast. I always felt like it was I don't know what put the P on there. Maybe it's like the evolution of the English language, like medieval to Renaissance literature with Chaucer and the vernacular. 100%. What do you think?
It very well may be because like you're right. It definitely, you can hear the P as much in like these three first uses, but honestly though, like when you're saying woot woot, like a lot of times you'll leave the P out. Like at a gathering, if you're just like woot woot with a bunch of people, you might not say the P. But that is a great question. When it became written form, why is the P always there now?
Well, it's kind of like when Chaucer would interpret the Tale of the Knight. He took the gallant love story and put his own medieval spin on it, therefore codifying it for the new lexicon. So it's another reason why ICP are big Chaucer marks.
I guarantee. There's no doubt in my mind.
I mean, when I was listening to Forgotten Freshness Volume 1 and 2, Mental Warp was like the final track, but let's talk about that. Like you actually researched that for this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So they did like you'd mentioned, a separate version that was X-rated. It had a very explicit cover, photoshopped Shaggy on there. We'll just leave it at that. And that version was highly sought after, not just because of the special edition cover, but it had an extra bonus track called Mental Warp, which is a very dark, morbid, and fresh song. But no worries if you missed out on that explicit version, because it became available on the last track of Disc 2 of the Forgotten Freshness Volume 1 and 2 re-release.
So was that after the game show song?
That
You're a dumbass or whatever, you're a stupid ass, was it after that?
Yes, it was, because the game show bonus track was on track 8. So if you had the regular or explicit version, you would get that.
So the discography section of Behind the Paint talks about there was a Tunnel of Love van. Now, what sort of mischief did this get the group into?
For sure. So this actually is a story that's in the Behind the Paint discography section. It's not in the actual book part. So a lot of Juggalos might have actually missed this story. There was a Tunnel of Love van used to promote this EP. And it was actually wrapped in flowers, basically looking like a Valentine's Day theme, just like the album. Liner notes and stuff. And apparently nobody really understood what the van was promoting at the time. And they would even get homophobic slurs and stuff yelled at them, I guess. because it was like pink flowers or whatever. And eventually Billy Bill pulled it over on the side of the road in a frustrated, just being all frustrated, and ripped the promotional covering off the van right then and there. And today it's looked at as like a funny mistake, like a promotional misstep that ICP made.
Much like a later promotional misstep where they would take the slurs and turn it into a rap with Isham on the Supervillains record. No, I'm just saying, like, the ICP's like homophobic humor and stuff is not fresh. And like nowadays rappers with being pink and wearing like neon and like Tyler the Creator, it's like the gender and the different, like, it's the different world. And like 100%. That story's definitely a 90s story. The liner notes talk about an upcoming Legz Diamond and Jump Steady record, but Chaos Theory wouldn't come out till like much later, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's super cool too. Yeah, Chaos Theory was promoted in this with the same title and album cover and everything. Didn't come out for like another 7 years, or I should say 5 years, 2002. And like you mentioned, Legz Diamond was also promoted in the liner notes, but the album did have a different title than the album we got in 2013, because at the time it was promoted as being called The Son of Silence, and it had a different album cover. With almost like I don't know if it's like a Chinese kind of like figure, like religious deity or something. But it did say at the top of the promotional ad, the Crime Family album. So maybe they had the idea for a theme similar to what actually made it on to Nine Pistolas. That's
what's up. And it's interesting that Legz Diamond raps on this record. We'll talk about that. Yeah. And I think you already did. So let's break down the tracks. So we're going to have the text in the bottom corner. Oh, look at that. What? Track 1, intro? All right. We have a basic, creepy, whispered intro. It's more scary than sensual. Track 1, the intro. We were like, what are the backwards words? And Snax, like, you did some research on that. Let's see what you discovered.
Yeah, not much, brother. I tried to figure it out. I, experimented with reversing, pitching it up, speeding it up. Not very much is discernible. Talks about something being passed down, and like at the beginning it says like I am something. I couldn't make out much of it though. If any juggalos know what that's all about, let us know.
Cotton Candy. Now, Shaggy is the first to rap on this, and Shaggy's the first to rap on Super Balls. And so I think this is the only record where Shaggy does the first verse on the first 2 songs. Am I wrong?
Dude, I didn't even think about that, but that's an interesting fact. You might be right about that.
And so it's kind of cool to like hear Shaggy rapping. And also at 121, there's a sample from Carnival of Carnage. Dun, dun, dun. There's a sample of that. And if any of you seen Big Money Hustlers, this song plays in the strip club, I think, when he meets his girlfriend.
Yes, sir. You are correct.
Jay has a line, and it reminds me of Piggy Pine. He goes, I said your daddy's home. She said so effing what? It reminds me a lot of the flow on Piggy Pine. The Guardy told me wait. Da, 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 da. Like the cadences and the flow. It's like, it's interesting how the sideshows are harbingers for what's to come on the records. They start finding these rhythmic things. And I haven't heard Jay do that, da, 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 that staccato triplets. Like, so I think that's tight. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Can I tell you a story about track 3, Super Balls?
Please do.
Okay. This is crazy, dude. So this is the first ICP song I ever heard. And there's a prank call that kicks off this sample. I just want to say also, I think the song was inspired by E40's Captain Save-A-Ho song, which came out in 93, which is like a superhero with a sexual undertone. And I feel like ICP have always been big E40 marks because he's on Twisted's Green Book, etc. Bay Area legend. Whoop, whoop. So anyway, speaking of the Bay Area, another artist from Northern California, Mike Patton from Faith No More. You've heard of Faith No More, right?
Yes,
Mr. Bungle. He's the guy doing the prank call here. Mike Patton from Eureka, from Northern California, which is like one of my favorite places in the state, and that's the biggest band to come out of there. It's from a tape called The Great Phone Calls by this guy, Neil Hamburger, that Mike Patton discovered, put out, who's a comedian who does like this, he does this character where he does like bad stand-up comedy, which by the way is hilarious because he'll go up and just do horrible jokes and bomb, and he has like a horrible comb over. Anyway, he put out this prank call album, and this is the call where Mike Patton's on. So back in the day, I've talked about this before, I had a website where I would do prank call tape trading. And my homie Chris out in Michigan got me up into ICP way before Shockumentary and all that. And he would make me tapes and he'd record like intros and talk about the songs. We'd trade pranks. And he said, okay, I'd heard this call from Great Phone Calls before because I heard it on this song. You might recognize it. And then he plays Super Balls. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like the song. I thought it was like juvenile, not funny, but I thought it was tight that they had sampled that saxophone lesson. Scary. So anyway, I thought that was tight that there's a connection there. This was the first ICP song I ever heard. And I also was wondering, are the chorus on this, the women who sing the chorus, do you think it's the same vocalists who did the Boogie Woogie Woo hook? Because I feel like they sound similar.
They do sound similar. Very well could be. I would not be surprised.
That's what's up. So I was wondering also, this is something else I thought about, Snax, that Super Balls and Cotton Candy, since Shaggy starts the verses, maybe these were songs that are outtakes from the Shags the Clown album that didn't come out.
It could be. That's another, piece of speculation that's definitely interesting and definitely within the realm of possibility.
Legz Diamond raps. Why the heck is his verse mixed so like quietly? Can't even hear it.
Yeah.
Did you notice that? It's like, yo, turn up, my boy.
100%. It is definitely, it seems lower than the other. He's kind of done like doing this like smooth like rap style. I don't know if they just had a hard time getting it right in the mix, but I definitely know what you mean there. A super cool verse, though. Definitely a unique style. I wonder if that was his first time, rapping ever or not. It's the first time the Juggalos hear him.
And it's the only time he raps, right? Other than singing.
Until, the only time he raps and stuff, and I'm trying to think on Nine Pistolas, it's mostly singing, because I don't know if he busts, any raps on that album either.
It's kind of funny, because nowadays all the rappers sing, too, right? Like, that's something Drake kicked off. So he's the original North American rap crooner because he lives in the Upper Peninsula and that's kind of near Canada. Keep it moving. At the end, I don't know if you noticed this. At the end, Jay does that thing like and it's just like the end of Chicken Hunt. And I'm like, all right, Jay, having fun. Did you notice that?
Yes, absolutely. The song. That's one thing that's really interesting about early ICP in general. Just the song outros you've mentioned before, they just get wild on them, and a lot of times they're long intros. Like that's why a lot of ICP songs, especially on the EPs, can go 5, 6, even 7 minutes long because they have these 3-minute outros sometimes.
These songs are all hella long, man.
Yeah.
It's like the album is what, an hour? I don't know. I didn't count, but I feel like it's long as hell.
I don't know either for sure, but it's the same thing with Terror Wheel. For EPs, they're always pretty long because of all the, again, song structures and the codas and everything like that.
So speaking of the flow, speaking of the way music is connected through the past, present, speaking of medieval literature becoming influenced by Renaissance literature and vice versa. Now, if ICP wanted to sample Buddy Miles' Down by the River, what might that sound like, and what kind of songs on the EP might manifest this Buddy Miles styles?
Interesting you should ask that, Lars, because that sample does actually make it onto the song called Ninja, which is might be my favorite song from the EP, because it's an early example of ICP's obsession with ninjas, long-standing obsession with ninjas, which is pervasive now throughout the whole Juggalo culture. And
I just want to say, follow my boy on Twitter, a ninja named Snax. Just saying.
That's right. Yeah, I definitely inherited a lot of my ninja obsession from my Juggalo-ness. It's a super cool song. Basically, Violent J is the only one rapping on this song, and he's telling the story from a guy who wishes he was a ninja, and he talks about if he was a ninja, all the things he would do, including enacting vengeance on his abusive dad, a boss, classmates, stuff like that. Super cool song. The beat's amazing, and I could not find the sample from the beginning, what ninja movie that is, but a lot of Juggalos know that ICP were obsessed with a lot of those cheesy 80s ninja movies, the ones by I think Thomas Tang and everything like that. So it could have been from one of those. I wish I could have found it. Again, if any Juggalos out there know, please let us know.
Well, and it's worth noting there's a difference between Chinese martial arts and Japanese ninja culture. And Jay has a song about a Chinese throwing star. No, those are Japanese. So that's like a historical inaccuracy. We'll let that one slide. Like the Wu-Tang Clan, we talk about their Eastern influence. That's Chinese. Like Wu-Tang is Kung Fu. So that's just worth noting. It's interesting that this is like after Wu-Tang, but it's different kind of interest in Eastern culture. That when Shaggy's on the song, he just says one song, "The wicked clowns will never die, ha ha ha." That is the line Jay says, spoiler alert, in Big Money Hustlers, when you think he's Big Baby Sweet's in the coffin. Nope, he comes out blasting everyone at the funeral. Great ending to a great film.
100%.
I'm wondering, I don't know about this, maybe some juggalos who are multilingual can comment in the comments. I don't feel like it's real Japanese in the chorus, but I don't know. But if it's not, that's kind of offensive to do like that kind of like making fun of a language. I don't know. They might be saying like, juggalos are tight. We are going to be in Tokyo one day.
They might have looked it up. It would have been harder back then. They didn't have Google Translate, but you never know. You know, Mikey Clark might be bilingual or trilingual. Who knows?
I also wanted to say two other things. The line, all the broken glass reminds me of the way he says broken glass on How Many Times, right? Mm-hmm. Also, he has this whole like hypothetical story about the chief chili fry maker who's like bossing him around when he gets to work. He takes a very oddly specific version of that on a Homies about what happens when someone who thinks they're the man who manages a fast food restaurant tries to manifest all the control of late stage capitalism on people who have these working class jobs, and what happens as a way to retaliate through letting go and giving up from the capitalist system as manifested by Adam Smith. That's what I'm saying. So Jay takes this very specific scenario. Did you realize chili fry maker? What did Jay like have a situation like this?
I know, right? Well, he did definitely work a lot of menial jobs, like in the early stages of like trying to get ICP off the ground. So I would say it very likely it could have been influenced by a very specific boss.
That's what's up. I want to talk about this. Is like something I've been wanting to talk about. And recently I sent my friend out in Cali, Chris, a different Chris, who's a big music fan, Peck the Town Crier, Chris Peck. I sent him this Bay Area mixtape, which I think I held up on an earlier episode. And he talked about how some of the songs haven't aged well because they're very anti-women, they're very objectifying. And I said to him, well, rap has always been about taking power back and about identity through a way that's like reclaiming yourself and like reclaiming power. And I feel like throughout this EP and throughout ICP's career, this is like a reoccurring theme, taking power back and protecting yourself and your family, but also using women as objects as a way to define and manifest your masculinity and thus your value in society in a world where the carnival creatures, their value and their place in society is negligible and tentatively held, right? And so that's problematic when we look back at the history of it, but it also creates situations like this where Jay comes back and protects his mom and beats up his dad for being abusive. And I want to get more into this as we go down the track list, but it reminds me of Story Behind the Paint where when they kick out the stepfather, they're throwing all this food at him and throwing plates, and it makes me think about like Fago and like the liberation that comes with throwing food and making a mess and being crazy as a way to manifest your own power through chaos and through like finding your voice. And so this song, like, it's very touching, like it's sad in a way that he has to fantasize about being a ninja to protect his mom, who worked so hard to provide for him and Jump Steady, and his sister, who was single mom. Like, I don't know, man. It's a very touching. It's one of the most real, sad, telling lines in all of ICP's discography. That verse. Absolutely, and in ICP form, like it gets sad and very real life themes, but done through a realm of fantasy and the extravagant. And I just think that's a microcosm. Like you're to your point, it's a microcosm of ICP's all around style of expressing themselves. Like C.S. Lewis using Narnia as a way to talk about God. The Dark Carnival is a way to talk about society and the world, and these characters is a way to talk about the disenfranchisement of the underclass in Midwestern culture when in the post-industrial car manufacturing era after the World War II boom in Detroit. I mean, that's what all this is if you look at it historically. Let's talk about Stomp. I think this is one of my favorite beats of all time. Dead Body Man is another one, and Boogie Woogie Woo is another one of my favorites. And then it hit me. I don't know if you know this. It's the exact same synth melody. Do 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 on Boogie Woogie Woo and Stomp. And they didn't sample it, but Mike replayed. It's the same melody. It's crazy. It might be a different key. You know what I'm talking about? It's like do 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 do. It's the same as the synth at the end of Boogie Woogie Woo. And I was like, oh, that's why I like it.
Yeah,
you remember
that's
that?
Cool, man. I actually did not notice that this most recent listen, but I'm definitely gonna go back and check that out. That's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's just like a creepy, dope sample. You can talk. Let's talk about Stomp because you know a lot about this track. Take it away, Snax.
Yeah, it's just super fun song. I mean, really, the theme of Shaggy's verse is kind of loose. It just sounds like him just going around town causing chaos. Fire is kind of a theme. Maybe like. It's about like from a, pyromaniac's kind of perspective, not sure. But the structure is unique because it really only has like a kind of long verse. And then it just goes into the end chant that, Juggalo still chant to this day. When I say stomp, you say whoop whoop, which brings us to
stop, whoop whoop, stop, whoop whoop.
Exactly. And that brings us to what we were saying earlier, another early use of the whole whoop whoop thing.
Okay, let's talk about Prom Queen. So We've talked about this whole problematic reoccurring theme of taking power back by controlling and ownership of women. We see this in Amy's in the Attic, in a way. We see this in My Room from Hell's Pit. And this song is particularly dark because Jay is trying to make his abusive father happy. And he talks about how controlling and owning this woman, killing her and having her live in his house to have this makeshift prom is a way for him to reflect the abuse that his dad did to his mom. It's very creepy. It's very real. It's very like Edgar Allan Poe, very visceral, and it's a reoccurring theme. And a few things I want to talk about it is the Principal Rogers voice, which I think is Legz Diamond. It's like the same sort of thing they did for the Mr. Johnson's Head remix where he's doing a homeroom announcement. I think it's funny how ICP they do these neologisms, which is like words they make up. Jay always says suffocate, not suffocate, suffocate. It's like they suffer and they suffocate. I don't know, or suffocate. I don't know if he just doesn't know how to pronounce the word right, but he says suffocate in this. And this song, like, it makes me feel, I don't know, it gives me the creeps, man. But maybe you could talk about the story and with Christine and like what the context is for this song.
For sure. It's an absolute horrorcore or horror rap masterpiece. Like you mentioned, talks about a high school student with an abusive dad who feels pressured by his dad to start having relationships with girls. He asks a girl named Christine out to the prom, and he gets rejected. So he resolves to murder her in the high school locker room, and then carries her home. Waits till nighttime, carries her home, and brings her corpse to the cellar. And then he decorates the cellar like a prom and dances with her dead body. And it's revealed at the end that, his dad, this will make his dad happy because his dad murdered his mom. So sorry for the graphic retelling of the song, but that's what it is. And I see Violent J, I couldn't find where he says this. I think it was an old Ask the Question, which used to be a thing that ICP used to do on their website where they'd get asked, they take like questions and answer them. A lot of those are lost forever. I'm almost positive that's where this is from. And he says that besides Hell's Pit, or maybe this is before Hell's Pit, and he said besides what's going to be on Hell's Pit, Prom Queen is the scariest song ICP has ever done. And I think that it is definitely has to be up there because it is such a morbid song. And it's morbid in the way that ICP usually do morbidity. Like, it's not blood and guts morbid. They're not super graphic when it comes to the actual murder. They're just, they set these super morbid, dark relationships up, this super just these disturbed characters, and just all around can give you a sense of horror with that without going into the actual details of like I said, blood and guts. But a masterpiece of a song. Gives Edgar Allan Poe a run for his money when it comes to morbidity. And
I would say about Poe, the reason that Poe's so amazing and timeless, you can almost like relate to, oh, I see why this character would act this way. That is the only way you can make the horror work, because in a way you kind of root for the villain, right? I heard someone said Friday the 13th, I think Chuck Klosterman wrote this. Friday the 13th, Jason is the hero. You root for him because you want him to get revenge for being killed by the negligent counselors. So it's like, yeah, it's just creepy. All right, so let's keep it moving. That is a classic song. We talked about objectification of women. We talked about some of their history. I think it's worth noting here about the reclaiming of power. Behind the Paint, Jay talks about how a stepfather molested him. He talks about how one of the ways he reclaimed his anger was he and his boys would roll up at sex workers and hit them in the face with bricks. Like, these two things, it's inexcusable. It's messed up, and it's really sad that like this happened. That he was molested. He talked about it in Howard Stern, especially, and that he would take his anger towards violence towards these women in Detroit trying to make a living. You know, it's like you shouldn't shame sex workers. You shouldn't assault them with bricks. Like, I don't know if that's a real story, but it's horrible. And this song, My Kind of B.I. blank blank, is, I don't know. It reflects this kind of deep misogyny that runs through a lot of macho culture. And I remember years ago, I was touring with a rapper friend of mine who's now a singer, K-Flay, and I dropped the B word, like randomly, like I shouldn't have, like trying to be funny or cool. And she's like, she took me to task on that. She's like, Lars, you can't say that word. Don't say that word. It's not funny. It's not cool. And it's not good. And it made me realize that, like, okay, you can't say that word. You can't use it as a way to normalize the subjugation of women. And you can't, and ICP nowadays, I feel like they celebrate juggalos and juggalettes and non-binary and transgender ICP fans, and they wouldn't use that word again. But this song just irks me and makes me think about my own like past and how, like, when I was a teenager, sometimes I might have said that word like trying to be funny or whatever, and it's not tight. And yeah, so shout out to K-Flay for like being like, don't use that word. And I've never forgot that, because she got legitimately mad at me, which she should have. You know, you shouldn't use that word. And I don't know. I think like I've learned to be more understanding of the feminists. People are gonna be, oh, Lars, you're such a cuck, blah blah blah, you're a liberal, blah blah. No, it's like women aren't paid as much. They have a lot of barriers in front of them. We have a president who's like, hopefully won't be president long, who said horrible things about women. And my wife has been very supportive of me doing the show and playing The Gathering and DCG Con and all this stuff. And is she the biggest ICP fan? No. But when we play the new single in the car, will she let me listen to half of it and not like get really annoyed? Yes. So it's like, this is one of the reasons why I think a lot of women may have problems with ICP. But anyway, yeah, that's all I want to say about this song. That was my soapbox for what I wanted to say about this. When I get out, so I wanted to share something real quick. One of my first rap songs I did was called Going For Your Ear. And I remembered this was a reference to the song when I wrote it. The chorus goes, when I get out of here, I'm going for your ear. Mike Tyson, don't come near. You have nothing to fear. And because Mike Tyson had bit off Evander Holyfield's ear. So maybe we'll play like a quick sample from that. My first album, Nothing to Fear, was a cover of like a clown I thought could be one of the Joker's cards. And I had this idea that I could be a character on Psychopathic because my real name's Andrew. So I'd be called Android and I'd be like a robot character. And I drew what my costume would look like. And my first albums, I was like, this would fit in the Juggalo world. And that's why it's funny 22 years later talking about all this. But like when I listened to When I Get Out, I was like, oh yeah, this was like my version of this song by them. So anyway, I don't know. It's just talking about first hearing Super Balls, and this EP was very like close to my heart when I was like a high school kid. So yeah, that title inspired that song. Yeah.
That's super cool. You told me about the Android concept, but I didn't realize that the Nothing to Fear cover was like directly inspired like that. It makes sense that it was.
That's what's up. Yeah, so that's a CD that I only sold maybe 200 copies of, and like whenever they've showed up on eBay, they go very quick. People, I think, on Patreon get like a down. I'm not trying to plug my Patreon necessarily, but some people have heard these old records. Dope. Okay, patreon.com/MCLars if you want to check out the whole album.
You do get the whole back cataloging, Insectivorous, all that stuff. I'm on there, and I got it. You can hear some super old Lars.
Thanks, Snax. Yeah, I was 16 when I made this stuff, and like a kid when I heard this record, and so that's why, I don't know, man. I've been thinking a lot about like how society programs us and makes us think what's normal, what's not, how capitalism and how what's defined as masculine, and you know what I mean? Like what all these things, how they program us in a way we don't even think that might be kind of insidious. And ICP is an interesting litmus test because I think about all the stuff that helped define who I was as a person and like what I still hold on to and what I don't. And so that's why this episode has been very cathartic. But let's talk about When I Get Out as a track.
Absolutely. Just super, basically, a little bit more of a light-hearted song after Prom Queen, because it just basically is a fantasy song about, what happens when you're getting out of jail and celebrating getting out of jail and doing all the things you do when you get out of jail. The beat is so great. The beat is fun. There's a lot of fun beats on this album. Just the production on this song is great. And then, as we mentioned before, it leads in. This is the song, I believe, that has the phone number outro, right?
Right.
Yes. So it leads into a thing that they did on the Terror Wheel, where they give you hints for a phone number that the Juggalos would have been able to discern and call. And then that phone line, message or whatever, when they call, gives them the name of the Joker's card, the upcoming Joker's card, which in this case, of course, would have been Malenko. And this one is done a little bit different than Terror Wheel, though, because it's actually like a parody of a game show, which ICP have done in many songs, and this is another example of that. And it's just super cool, like we mentioned in the Terror Wheel episode, that they use these EPs to promote the next Joker's card and get people psyched up for the new ICP era.
Well, and it's almost like nowadays like a social media contest, right? You before Twitter, you dial a number, so they'd say a rhyme that'd be like, what's an example? Like something. This is great, but otherwise you don't know the next number is, and then it's 8, right? So it's really cool. Like, have you ever called the number?
No, I've never. I never even tried, just because I figured it's a while ago. I wonder what you get if you called either of them. You called I think you called the Terror Wheel one, right, in that episode?
Yeah, and it was nothing. Shaggy talks about how Arctic Sun Fago is like the worst. What's the verdict on Arctic Sun Fago? Have you tried it?
I haven't tried it. It's funny you should mention that. There's actually a candy store that opened up here that actually has it. I don't know if it's from that run that was recently released, and I need to go and get it. Because my friend picks them up. But I think it's polarizing. I think it's one of those drinks some people like, some people love.
Well, if it's from the Arctic, it's definitely going to be polarizing. Hey! Polarizing. There's also a sample here that I don't know if a lot of people know, but I know the sample because it's the song that inspired Hot Topic It's Not Punk Rock, which is an old song I did with the Matches. They straight up sample Minor Threat's Screaming at a Wall. The punk song. So that's like, what's up? Shout out to Ian MacKay.
Is that like the hint where like Violent J sounds like he's in a mosh pit?
Yeah. That's Minor Threat.
Oh, dope. Okay, I didn't know that.
So like, I was like, I know that because that's like a very iconic riff, a very iconic, straight edge EP that, shout out to Minor Threat. Did they clear it? I don't know. But Ian MacKay let me sample Waiting Room on my song No Logo with Jesse Dangerously. I just straight up emailed him. He's like, yes, if it doesn't come out on a major label, you can use it. So because this wasn't on a major label, maybe they did talk to Ian. Maybe not. I don't know.
Is that the main bass line in No Logo? Like the
Yeah, that's from that's a Fugazi song, which is like an incredible song.
Cool. I didn't know that. That's dope.
Holler. So after this dropped, what was the aftermath?
Like we mentioned earlier, this was released in the 2-day gap between Jive Records and Hollywood Records. So shortly after releasing this, almost immediately after, they flew to LA, I believe, to meet up with Julian Raymond, the representative that they were dealing with Hollywood. I'm not sure his actual job title that he had with Hollywood, but he's the guy they were dealing with, and they actually really liked Julian. They thought he was like a juggalo, genuinely loved ICPs, all their stuff, not just Riddlebox. And as soon as they meet up with Julian Raymond in person, Violent J talks about in his book that Julian Raymond actually knew about the thing they did with Tunnel of Love, releasing it themselves in between the signing, and but he was a good sport about it, and that would lead to them actually, or then they actually get signed to Hollywood, which means that Malenko's coming up soon. We only got one release between this episode and Malenko, and we're gonna have to see how that turns out.
Yeah, so the next episode would be Mutilation Mix, the greatest hits that never were hits.
That's right.
Which was the first. So Super Balls was the first ICP song I heard. Mutilation Mix was the first like album I listened to. What a great record to be introduced to. You know,
absolutely.
My man Chris sent me that CD, and I remember I first heard it like before Halloween of right before Malenko came out, and yeah. That CD, man, that moment when it's like the seasons change and you know what I mean? I think about how I always associate ICP discovering them for the first time at that part of the year when I was like a 14, 15-year-old kid. And I'm very excited for next week's episode. Check out MC Snax, his Bandcamp. Check out my Bandcamp. I'm doing songs about all the Star Wars movies on Patreon. And what's my next one? My next one is the Clone Wars. Yeah, the Clone Wars. I'm doing a song about that. And, yeah, this has been awesome. Leave comments, correct us if we're wrong. And I want to just say, Snax, thanks for keeping this train going. Like, you're the reason this train is happening every week, and I really enjoy doing these episodes.
Oh, me too, man. I can't wait. We got lots of more flavor to cover. Lots on the horizon.
Lots of Arctic sun, polar sun flavor.
That's right.
What's your favorite song from this? Probably Ninja?
I think Ninja, but I'm privy to Super Balls too. I do have a juvenile sense of humor. There's no way around it. And I just think that's one of the funniest songs ICP have done.
I want to say, we didn't mention this. Ghetto Boys, Damn It Feels Good to Be a Gangster was definitely an influence on Ninja. Ghetto Boys is one of the first groups to do horrorcore rap, specifically Scarface. And that's what's up. So I just wanted to make that connection, holler.
Absolutely. Whoa, whoa.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Thanks for watching, y'all.
Much clown love. Peace.
Forks up, was it? Forks up, forks down.
That's right. Well, yeah. And you
Ringmaster.
got the W and the C up.
Oh, yeah. What's the WC for? Wicked Clowns?
Wicked Clowns, yeah.
Holler. That's tight. That's tight. We don't support gang signs, but ICP's not a gang, so we're good.
That's exactly
Peace.
right. Peace.
I'm a juggalo, not a gang member.